So hello, hi. We're here with Councilman Elito M. Santarina, and we're going to ask him a couple questions concerning immigration. So my first question is, what are the issues that affect the Filipino community in regards to immigration?
Okay, first we have to start by qualifying, understanding even better immigration. Okay, we are talking, of course, people immigrating to other countries legally, and then, of course, if you are undocumented, then people out there also host themselves as immigrant. So therefore, uh, if you are a, a documented immigrant, the job opportunities, of course, are numerous. In other words, if you are legal resident, in other words, green card holder as an immigrant, right? I'm sure you're familiar with that. Then opportunities such as jobs, housing, anything that the government provides for our for the citizens of any particular city, as long as you are documented. And also, uh, because you are a documented immigrant, then you can start counting the number of years that you are living in any particular city. And by the time you reach your fifth year of being here in America, then you can apply for your U.S. citizenship. And that's another part of the story that any immigrant, of course, uh, hopes to, you know, uh, get in the future, okay, to become a U.S. citizen. But I am also aware, cognizant of the fact that some documented immigrants prefer to stay as immigrants per se and choose not to become American citizens. Okay, so having qualified that, therefore, what about those immigrants who are not documented? So how does it happen? Well, because countries also, I mean, U.S. What do you call it in the Philippines? The Rojas, U.S. U.S. Embassy also allows citizens to come to America as tourists because they have tourist visa. All right. So again, they are with their relatives who are U.S. citizens, and they're provided with a lot of opportunities and enjoy the American way of living, and that people who have been granted by U.S. Embassies all over, especially Filipino, somehow are being helped by attorneys who are immigration lawyers, and therefore, they convert these visas into green card holders.
Residency.
Another also is a source of immigration numbers in terms of immigration, right? Source is people coming here as students. They of course, they're granted also student visas and enjoy, continue, the American kind of education, which the Filipinos, of course, are very, very, what do you call it, enamored. Because why? Because the educational system in America, government system in America is very, very similar or parallel to the systems in the Philippines. Okay, and I have to admit, and Richelle, you can weigh in here too. I have to admit that, especially if you are, you have student visa, granted student visa, you study here, USC, especially they know UCLA. I'm sorry. And then when I'm in the Philippines, I also say, hey, there's a Cal State Dominguez Hills in the city where I live and serve as a council member. Okay, and and then they go back to the Philippines. Let's say they, go back to the Philippines, when they say that they graduated, they finished courses, they got their master's degrees here. People look up to you, and they say, "Wow, you are an American educated individual. We will hire you." That's how will I say, that's a colonial mentality still in the Philippines. Especially if you are really going there. Some of the folks, and this is not my first time that I'm to experience this, because I was a teacher in the Philippines. I taught high school as well as college. So I was already speaking. And when we had workshops in the Philippines regarding learning English as a second language, where we had American professors also, going over there, because remember, I worked in the linguistics department, and this is the colonial mentality that I'm talking about. If you speak over there with relative no accent or with a little bit of accent, American accent, then they look up to you. I don't know. They said they want you, but me, in my case, it's different. If my here even when my audience is relatively seniors, I speak the English the way I should be talking to them in the Filipino way of English. Otherwise, if I sound like this and so on and so forth, and talk to American, then they will not understand me. Oh, they do, but just a little, but kind of slow to pick up. So when I am with seniors, I'm not demeaning them. I'm just saying that I am adapting to the sound system of English, the delivery of English, in the way they will understand me. So, in other words, I don't know if your professor is Tagalog or understands Tagalog. I say, pag nagsalita ako sa English with Tagalog, and the way I'm expressing myself in Tagalog way, in Filipino way, then it's very effective. And that's how I speak to group of immigrants who would want to know more about immigration issues, which, I am not an immigrant per se, officer per se, but we try our best, Rizal and I try our best to invite the Filipinos who have some concerns about what in particular they ask for.
They usually ask about the status of their applications, because that as immigrants we file different kinds of petitions before the USCIS, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Sometimes it takes a while before they get the actual status of their petition. So the USCIS was actually working on it to have a better, like a phone center, to have a better portion of that on the website that will give the actual status of the case. But they're still working on it until now. So the Filipino immigrants here in Carson would sometimes go to us here at City Hall and ask for assistance. And that's when we contact the USCIS community outreach people, and they would do their best to give us the actual status of that specific case. And because of that, Councilmember Santorina has worked with USCIS and have actually invited them over here last February 3 to help Carson residents with whatever immigration and citizenship questions they have, especially on how to apply for U.S. citizenship. So that was last February.
Okay.
Do you do it annually, or this is the first time you did it?
That was the first time.
Okay.
But before that, we've been dealing with the immigration people with respect to specific cases that were brought before us by the constituents.
When you did that event, were there a lot of Filipinos that came?
Not a lot, because that was the first time, and I think the promotions that were done was not enough, because they did not really intend it to be a big event, because that was the first one. So they were just thinking having a small consultation, but apparently this small consultation wasn't really that small. There were more people than they expected, actually. So-
And
Mhm.
we, of course, we plan to do it again.
Yeah, and Councilman
Yeah.
Santorino wants it bigger.
Okay.
So it was their event, but then with the city's help in promoting it, we can do it bigger and reach out to even nearby cities. Because some of the people are from Carson.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning at this time also that I forgot the name of the a person from even Washington D.C. came.
Yes.
That lady, the
Mhm.
lady.
That was
I'm sorry.
their, I think their director for
Their direct-
community services.
And the reason why I am interjecting that is because Washington D.C. and all our officers here in Los Angeles, you know, I mean, imagine they all show up here and show an interest in helping the Filipino per se immigrants,
Mhm.
and they say that, and the presenters who are of course staff members of in Los Angeles
Yes.
were Filipinos.
Mhm.
They are Filipinos.
And it was in Tagalog.
And the presentation was done in Tagalog.
Oh, that's very nice. Yeah.
You know, I don't know how your group can. Well, maybe they can help.
Yeah.
your team
Uh-huh.
at Cal State Dominguez Hills perhaps
Spread the word.
can
Yes.
spread the word and help
A
us out.
network as well.
Okay.
Because because that was the first time, so those people from Washington came. They
Mhm.
observed
Mhm.
and they absolutely wanted it bigger next year.
Mhm. And would you say, are there like other assets that are available for Filipino immigrants here?
Any community
In
assets?
Community assets like in Carson, like what would you say like to assist them? Resources?
Oh,
From
yeah.
The city of Carson.
This
The city of Carson.
per se, sorry, no. As a municipal government, are we talking about funding or any budget
Anything
or
like
any
activities,
that
like,
we can allocate in order to help our Filipino immigrants? Answer is no. Not no.
If specific to helping them out in their immigration status, we do not have that. But there are a lot of immigration lawyers in the city that offer free consultations to Filipino immigrants. So we send them over there if these are legal questions already that we could not help them with. So we send them to these immigration lawyers.
And this is where right now I'm just thinking on the back of my mind. This is where you young leaders can come in and help this community, the Filipino immigrant community, to have closer contact with the lawyers, but especially the Filipino practicing lawyers on immigration, because the problem there is one of the problems that I know is the lack of financial resources.
That's true.
You see,
Consultations could be free, but subsequent appearances and pleadings that the lawyers will do, those are not free. So, we're limited with the assistance that we give them. If it's something that the Philippine consulate can help them with, then we refer them to the consulate. The city of Carson has a very good relationship with the Philippine consulate. But for other legal matters on their petition, we're limited to volunteer lawyers.
so we have raised some questions on these problems or potential problems already, and I am particularly calling your attention to, that I hope that this project of yours is going to really make sure that after you identify the problems that we have mentioned so far, that your team will think of some other ways by which we can really help our Filipino immigrant community.
Do you think legislation would help, like a policy?
You know what?
Yeah.
That is a great idea. Yeah, but okay.
But it has to be federal.
Oh yeah, it has to state legislature,
Oh,
to some extent. Okay, let's say there is well, on different subject matters already. Yeah, Filipinos to be. Yeah, there was a legislation introduced, and I don't know if it passed. You know, our Filipino veterans to really make the people aware or known to the people that these Filipino soldiers really fought side by side with the Americans during World War II and even prior to that. And there was a legislation introduced to have this historical fact to be a part of the books, the history books, because it wasn't there. Or if there is a mention of these Filipino soldiers participating, there was just like one sentence or two. So now going back to immigration, of course, there will be legislators who are going to sponsor this kind of legislation in terms of helping the Filipino American community legal, okay, undocumented.
And we have lobbyists. We
Lobbyists.
have a lot of Filipino.
And that's a good
groups.
idea. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Oh, you do have lobbyists.
We have a lot of Filipino organizations that lobby before the legislature for legislations that favor Filipino immigrants.
And when you open, this is opening a kind of a Pandora's box. When you do this, of course, hey, what about the Samoans?
Yeah.
Hey, what about from Belize? What about the African American? You know, what about the European? Okay. So that were we able to at least help you? Veron is saying we don't have any city assets. I mean, city provision. I mean, approved program that will that's sponsored by the city. Right? We don't have any.
No, for immigration per se.
Per se, immigration.
There's a federal agency taking care of it.
Yeah, that's immigration issue.
Yeah, so the USCIS beginning last year or 2 years ago, they started going to the different cities. So they want to reach out to the local governments and find out, like they really are the ones that go and find out what the problems are, and they want to make it easier for the immigrants to communicate with them.
See,
So that's what they're doing
that's
all
another
this.